Hi, I'm Rob from robtelephoto.com, and today I'm going to be answering the question: once you've got your Canon 600D T3i with your 18 to 55 kit lens, what's the next lens you should go for? I've got a bit of a head start with this one because if you've kept an eye on the robtelephoto.com blog or the YouTube channel, you'll know that my previous camera that I've had for several years has been a Canon 350D, and I've got quite a few, or had quite a few lenses for that particular camera. Some I've kept and don't use anymore, some I've kept and I use an awful lot, but I think I've probably got a good idea if you're a budget amateur photographer like myself, what should you be getting next. Now, you're probably looking at that saying that's not the 18 to 55 kit lens, and you'd be right, that's the 40mm f2.8 STM lens. You don't want to buy that one next. So let's take that one off and let's put back on the lens should have been on there when I started doing the video, which was the 18 to 55 kit lens. As you can see in this particular case, it's got the little lens hood on, always a good idea. Prevents glare, but more importantly protects the front of the camera as well from bashing into things when you're against walls. So, you know, you've got your nice shiny new camera, maybe a bit like me, you got it for Christmas, and you're enjoying the 18 to 55, you know, nice and wide. When you zoom to 55, okay for portraits, but you feel like you're missing something. You're missing the reach, you're missing the zoom, you're missing that long focal length you want. Maybe you're into wildlife photography, maybe you're into sports, maybe you just want to get closer to the action, maybe you want to compress scenes, and perhaps maybe you even want to take some nice portraits with a slightly longer focal length, because as a rule of thumb, the longer the focal length, so the longer the lens that's on your camera, the more flattering the photographs you'll see. Now, you'll probably see bandied around in lots of forums and ideas that lots of people shout about these lenses. This is a nifty 50. This is the Canon 50mm f1.8. This is the Mark 1 version with a metal mount. Don't worry about that. Mark 2, virtually the same, just as a plastic mount. Really cheap lens, a good lens to buy, but it's not the lens you want next. After you're 18 to 55, don't go for something like a 50 for 50. Don't go for something like the 40mm. Don't go super wide with like a 10 to 22 or anything. The next lens you want, if you're on a budget like myself and you want a really nice lens, you want the Canon 55 to 250 f. Well, he says, looking at the end of it, what is it? f4 to f5.6 IS EFS lens. Gosh, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Now let me take the lens hood off. Nice lens hood to hide there. Again, lens hoods, people don't often use them, but they're really good. Again, they stop glare. So when they're on the when they're on the lens, if you imagine the sun's coming in from the side, if that gets into your lens and starts bouncing around inside the elements, it reduces the overall contrast in your photo. So they might go a little bit hazy, and you might actually get things like you know, that you used to get those little circles on as well. Can look cool, and if you want it, really good. But there might be situations where all that's happening is the contrast is just going down in your photos, and that can be lens flare or lens glare. That's where your hood comes in. And also, as I say, if it's on the camera and you're bashing into things, it protects the front element of the lens. You imagine if you drop that, it's going to land on there. The hood will probably snap off, but the lens will be fine. So let's put this onto the 600D T3i, see what it looks like. Ooh, take the end cap off, always helps. And there we go. So, whee! That's the 55 to 250. Now, this is a budget, it is an entry-level lens. But it does have IS, does have image stabilization. Again, you've got the switch just on the side there. It's what we would call a fairly slow lens in the fact that the maximum aperture when you're zoomed, that, you know, at the widest is at f4, and when you're zoomed all the way out like that, the maximum aperture is f5.6, so it doesn't let that much light in. Obviously it goes up to, I think, f22 or something like that. However, it is a very good price. On Amazon.co.uk you can pick one up for £134.79. Get them cheaper second hand as well. If you're in the States, you can pick up a 55-250 from Amazon for $199. Again, you know, a good price. I bought mine second hand a few years ago, and I would say to you that the 55 to 250 Canon f4 to 5.6 IS lens is a fantastic lens. It is incredibly sharp. It is you can use this lens for portrait photography. You can use this lens for, well, landscape and architecture photography. If you want to compress the images, obviously you're only getting a little bit of the scene. And you could probably, you can use it for sports and anything. There's a couple of caveats for that. It is a really high quality lens, especially if you just remember that don't shoot it wide open. So don't shoot at f4 all the time or f5.6 when you're zoomed in. Just close it up a couple of stops to, like, maybe, I don't know, f.56 at the wide end or f8 at the long end, and that will just sharpen up those photos that little bit. And this is where cameras like the newest sort of 600D with a high ISO performance really come into their own, because one of the things against this type of lens in the past has been the fact that, yes, it's got image stabilization, so you can be shooting at 100th of a second at quite a long focal length, and even though you're quite shaky, the lens is going to look after you. But you know, if you're shooting at 100th of a second because of the small aperture not letting in that much light, your subject, if it's moving fast, is going to be blurry, because if you want to take pictures of sports cars racing around, you've got to be shooting at 1,000th of a second, or if you're people running around, at least 250th of a second, depending on your focal length. Now, with modern cameras, where we can shoot at ISO 800, we can shoot at ISO 1600 and have pretty clear images, these lenses really come into their own, because you could be at f8 at the long end, where your shutter speed ISO 200 or 400 maybe is something like a 1/125th of a second. Crank up that ISO to, you know, ISO 800, 1600, 3200, especially if you're outside, and you'll have lovely, clean, crisp images. I love this lens. It's produced some fantastic photographs, and I would recommend it to anybody as the second lens for your 600D or Rebel T3i after the 18 to 55 kit lens. Okay, that's enough from me. My name's Rob from robnunphoto.com. Remember, you can email me scalespeeder@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.